Welcome to our latest edition of 5 Insightful Minutes. I am Chris Walton.
And I'm Ann Mazinga.
And today we are going to put one of the directors from the A&M Consumer and Retail Group, John Clear, on the hot seat for the next 5 minutes as we discuss how Just Walk Out technology will or will not shape the future of retail. John, let's start with this. In a recently released white paper, A&M CRG examined various Just Walk Out technologies at a variety of different retail operations. What was the purpose of this study?
I think you would be familiar with the fact that this technology, has been christened as the greatest retail innovation of the next 30 years. So from that perspective, we wanted to really get in there and understand how it works in the various forms that exist in the market at the moment from a customer's perspective. So is it as frictionless as everybody claims it is? Are there areas that it needs to be improved in? And the reason why we were really driven to do this is because over the last couple of years, we've seen this expand from small formats like Amazon Go up to larger formats via Amazon Fresh, and then into the kind of big release this year of Whole Foods as a full service retail destination. And as that grows, obviously complications expand. So we want to really understand how this works and what the benefits are from a customer perspective and the pain points could be from an implementation side.
Well, John, let's dive into that a little bit. What pain points does Just Walk Out technology solve for both consumers and retailers?
So if we start from the consumer side first, I think we can all agree that the two most annoying things that happen when you go into a grocery store are that you can't find the product you want, and then when you're checking out, it takes way too long and you're waiting in line. So if we take the second part of that first, there is an easy solve for checkout waiting times here. This is the kind of perfect shopping situation for somebody like me who wants to go in and not talk with anybody and leave my AirPods in, and I'm not forced to have awkward small talk, and I don't have to wait in line, and I can just go straight back to my car and kind of get what I need very quickly. So that's a huge win, I think, in a lot of scenarios. The other side of it is when tech like this is incorporated very well into a retail setting and it's monitored properly, it can do a very good job of matching supply with demand. And that's the second part of the equation for a consumer who can get the right product they need at the time they need it in the location they want it. So there's two kind of easy wins there. From a retailer's perspective, what we see is that it tackles the two major kind of universal pain points that grocery retailers talk about. And I think you're both familiar with that. It's going to be labor hours and shrink. And so the labor is pretty easy in that you take a group of people who normally spend most of their day cashing people out and redistribute them amongst the stores. So if we take Whole Foods as an example in Washington, D.C., they still had a lot of employees, but they were in areas of higher impact, like the butcher counter, like fresh produce monitoring quality and availability. And on the other side, this is in theory a shrink killer, because when you think about it, a product is tracked from the moment it enters the store via cameras and sensors. Customers can't enter or exit the store without giving their credit card information over. So everything is tracked and then paid for. And so it's a huge win for a retailer from that perspective.
With all that said, what are some of the challenges that may be holding back Just Walk Out technology's overall adoption?
So if we look at it from the other direction this time, so if we look at it from the retailer side, I think the two major pain points that we see are cost and complication. So as you can probably guess, installing technology like this is extremely expensive. It's one of the reasons why Amazon are pushing it so hard in their own flagship stores, and why we've noticed, and you will have seen this year, that they've now licensed the technology to third parties. So for example, WH Smith, so it needs to be funded. The other side, when I talk about complication, is grocery retail specifically, and if we think of the US market, has relatively outdated infrastructure, so it could be decades old. Installing updated technology that requires sensors and cameras across that network is going to require a lot of work, and again is the reason why you see Amazon striving forward with new openings, and even where people are trialing it in other settings. If we think of Aldi in the UK, that's a brand new store that they're trialing it in because they can actually put it in there. The next stage of retrofitting is going to be expensive and complicated, and finding the funding is never easy in a grocery setting. The other thing, if we think about it from a consumer lens, is there is a growing disquiet around privacy and how much we really want retailers to track us. So when you're sitting at home on your couch watching Netflix and you just click accept cookies, that's like one thing. But when you walk into a Whole Foods and you're faced with a wall of cameras that are literally going to watch everything you do for the next 45 minutes, I think that brings that concern a lot more to life. For a lot of consumers, that may not make a huge difference, but I think there's enough people and enough skeptics out there that could slow the adoption.
So, John, what are you at CRG then recommending retailers do to really evaluate whether or not to apply Just Walk Out technology in their stores?
So from our perspective, even with all of those kind of pain points that I've just mentioned, this is a when, not if conversation, because the benefits far outweigh any of the negatives. And if we think about it from kind of a top-down level, it can drive sales, it can reduce your costs, and it can improve customer experience, which in any setting is a no-brainer. So what we're discussing with our clients is you need to urgently evaluate where you can get this into your upcoming remodel or expansion plan so that you can iron out the kinks. The second part is understand your IT infrastructure and where the possible roadblocks there could be, so you're well set up to roll it out as it goes forward. And then the final thing is to prioritize where you're going to implement it. So which demographics is this going to apply to first? For example, urban areas with high penetration of Gen Z and millennials, as well as labor shortages, are obvious places to start. The reality is that grocery retailers are not always very quick to modernize, but I think that what we've seen in the last number of years with supply chain issues and labor shortages and inflation, this type of innovation is going to come whether they wanted to or not. And those people who are proactive are going to be best served in the long run when they approach this.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.